Okay. All right. Recording has started. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight on another roundtable. I think this is 42 or 43 so far, so we've got a really good library building up. If you're new, you can watch all the replays back on YouTube. You can search for Team 2052's YouTube channel, and there's a roundtables playlist. All right. With that, I'd like to introduce Michael Flood. Michael's with No Mythic, and Michael is going to be leading our conversation tonight. Michael, the floor is yours.
Excellent. Well, welcome everybody. I actually would love to start with some gratitude to Scott for putting this all together. It's been a really nice way to connect with some other people and other mentors and other students. And I'd love to start with just a round of introductions because it's just nice to know, like, who are we talking with? So if you'd be willing to do a quick round of who are you, what team are you coming from, and like what draws you to FIRST? My name is Michael. As said, I'm with No Mythic. And honestly, it's my favorite way of working with young students. Of just like super engaging, super difficult, super rewarding. It seems like the best of all possible scenarios. And you just have to jump in. I can't see who all is there. Although someone has some interesting static in the background. I think it's Greg. If you could mute yourself, that would be great. Let's just do a quick round. There's, I think, about 15 of us, maybe 20 of us now out there. And I'd like to hear your names and where you're from.
If everyone could open the presenter slide, if you're on a PC, why don't we just go down the list? Because it looks like they're in alphabetical order. That'll make it easy. So, Clay, I think that makes you first.
Awesome.
Oh, no, Ben. Wait, Ben.
Oh, dang it.
He's number 2. Ben, can you go first?
Yeah, I'm Ben Johnson. I'm a first-year mentor for FIRST. I've had kids on the team for about 4 years now, and I just really enjoy the whole FRC thing in robots. I'm really into that, and I love sharing, my knowledge with the kids.
Thanks, Ben. All right, Clay.
All right. I'm Clay Hansen. I'm a first-year mentor for No Mythic 2491, and this has become sort of the perfect intersection of like hobbies and skills. I've done a lot of youth work, summer camp counselor, and I love tinkering. I'm a mechanical engineer by training, and I have had the most fun 9 months of my life this last 9 months. So,
Awesome. All right, David.
I'm Dave Jackson with 7850. My first year mentoring as well. I got active because my son, Jaredin, who's also with me.
Yeah, I'm just sitting.
Is a sophomore with 7850. I honestly love the program, the way it's built, the way it challenges and helps young students grow in many aspects of life. So.
And Jaredin, what's your role on the team?
Oh, he's a mentor on the
What's
team.
your role?
I am. Sorry, let me clear my throat. I'm a sophomore on the team. I've been on the team for 2 years. I'm the engineering captain for the team.
Nice. All right, that brings us to Eric.
Okay, I'm Eric Schaefer. I've been with FIRST Robotics for about 17 years. I was recruited when they were beta testing LabVIEW for some of the earlier robotics, and I sort of floated between teams. I worked with, at that time, with eDiner and Southwest, and then I sort of became sort of a LabVIEW mentor for the state. And then many years ago, raising my grandson, I moved back down to FLL and FTC, coaching him. And then when he hit high school, I'm now with Talon Robotics, which he's now graduating with. I'm the programming mentor for the team at the moment.
What an adventure. Isaac.
Hello, I'm Isaac. I'm on 2052 junior, and the thing that brought me to FIRST would be basically working with mentors, I guess, and building all of the engineering skills
Jeremy?
Hello. I'm assuming there's no other Jeremys here. I'm on my phone, so I apologize. I'm one of the head coaches for 2181 Gears up in Blaine, and I started in first back in 2011. I was a high school math teacher, and they said, so the principal came in and said, "We need someone to do this, and you're new, so you have to." And I've loved it ever since. So I'm a diehard. I love working with the kids. Love project management. So just love it all.
Awesome. Jesse?
Yeah, I'm Jesse Frost. I'm with Team 3134 and 3275 out of Cass Lake, Minnesota. I'm a high school technology education teacher. I've been doing FIRST for 12 or 13 years now. Being at the realm that I teach in, it's kind of an engineering, manufacturing type of field, and I think FIRST robotics is probably the best way to teach a kid those skills that is out there that I've ever seen. So that's why I really enjoy it. It gets these kids the real world experience.
Awesome. Jim?
Hi, I'm with 2530, third year mentor in FIRST program. I've been doing the Lego robotics for 9 or 10 years, working with a lot with Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts, do Pinewood Derby workshops for Cub Scouts each year. Been doing that for about 10 or 12 years. I'm a retired captain with the fire department here in Rochester. I enjoy learning as much from the kids as I do teaching them things. They teach me a lot about different things. Enjoy the fact that they're learning so many life skills, things that people don't normally think about, including like public speaking and the business side of things. It's a really good program, and I enjoy it.
Awesome. John?
So I'm John Schmidt. I'm with Team 2502. I've been with FRC for 9 years. I did 2 years of FTC and 1 year of FLL with my daughter. For a living, I design non-volatile memory IP for a major semiconductor. If you're probably further than 3 feet away from something I've worked on, you're probably not. You're within 3 feet. So and.
Hi, I'm Josie. I'm also here. I'm an alumni from Team 2502, and I've come back to mentor since it was really great for my experience and stuff.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us tonight. Jonathan?
Hi, John Strathis. Been with Robettes since 2007 when the team was founded. I also volunteer as a lead robot inspector, and as our chief volunteer says, there is no exit plan.
Awesome. Lexi?
Hi, I am team captain for Team 2052 KnightKrawler. This is my second year of doing that, and I'm a senior, so this is my 4th year with FRC, and FRC is the only FIRST program that I've done. I've really enjoyed being on the team and connecting with all of the students and working on my leadership skills throughout the process of doing FIRST.
Awesome. Good to see you, Lexi. Liam?
Hi there, my name is Liam. I use he, him pronouns. I am the team captain of 2491 No Mythic. I joined, I started with FLL because I was looking for a robotics program, then did FTC, then I joined FRC because who doesn't want to build amazing robots? But really the reason why I stayed, and the reason why I love FIRST robotics, especially FRC more than anything else, is because of the amazing connections that I've made with my peers and my mentors. And it's been life-changing to get to experience building robots with my best friends in the world.
Awesome. Thanks, Liam. Luna?
Hi, I'm a junior on Team 2052, and I joined robotics last year. First robotics competition is the only FIRST thing I've done so far. And I've enjoyed just being on the team and being around all of these people on the team, and in general just working within FIRST and the team.
Awesome. Luna, what's your role on the team?
I'm on the programming sub team.
Nice. All right, Nate.
Hey, I'm Nate Smeal. I'm a build mentor for KnightKrawler. I've been a mentor with the team since KnightKrawler started, and so this is their 18th season. I got started with FIRST. I heard about it. Minnesota was expanding a lot, adding teams back then. It was something not available to me when I was in high school. I would have loved to have done it. And I just continue to be inspired and like surprised how much kids learn and grow in this program, and how much they are ahead of where I was at their age in terms of I knew I wanted to be an engineer, but I didn't know what that meant. And this program shows them kind of what that looks like. And I think it's great.
Awesome. Thanks. Rasmus.
Hello, my name is Rasmus. I'm the design captain for Team 2491 No Mythic. I'm finishing up my senior year. I joined 9th grade after I heard from my brother who graduated from the team how great it was. And I learned so much about the team, learned so much on the team about leadership, design, and how to work as a team. It's been a good experience.
Thanks for joining us. Ryan?
Hey, my name is Ryan Swanson. I'm the lead mentor for Team 6045, and I'm an alumni from Team 4607. I think I'm in my 12th year now in the program, 2 as a student, and now I'm in my 10th as a mentor. Hugely passionate about the program. I'm an expert at arguing on Chief Delphi and creating controversy there. But no, I'm happy to be here. Happy to hear from all of you.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us. Sam.
Hi, Sam Wieselman. I was on Team 2847 for 2 years as a student. After that, went up to the college thing and all that, and came back to help out with a little bit of programming, and ended up becoming the lead mentor. And so I've done that for the last 7 years now. I know one of the things I love about FIRST is just I loved how much I learned from athletics in high school about being on a team, working together, and all that. And I love to see basically help kids do that in a different environment where they can use their minds and build skills that carry forward too. So beyond throwing a ball or something. So yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Scott, do you want to introduce yourself again?
Sure. My name is Scott Davis. This is my 9th year in FRC, and I've got, I believe, 3 years of FTC coaching as well. First 7 years I did programming, mentoring. The last 2 years I've been doing CAD training through the fall, CAD mentoring through the fall and build season, and transitioned back to programming mentor during competition season.
And Stacy?
Good evening, everybody. I'm Stacy Foreman with Team 2472, currently the finance mentor and president for our booster club. Had 2 kids in the program, 1 in the program currently, and I work with a lot of youth in Scouts BSA and other programs too, and I think this is another great way for kids to learn things, solve problems, and get some really good life and business, just workplace skills, and having to collaborate with people that maybe are way different than you, and speak to adults and learn how to do some public speaking and write proposals. I think that's been really helpful, and I've learned so much throughout the year in this program, and look forward to continuing to learn from other people. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us, Stacy. Tom.
Yeah, hi. Sorry, I'm a bit late. I'm Dominic, second year on 2491, and this year I was scouting and awards lead.
Thanks for joining us, Tom. Tom Sample.
Hi, I missed the intro, so I'm not sure what we're supposed to be saying, but I've been around FRC about a decade. I'm currently with 2549 Washburn Miller bots. And what are the other issues that we're supposed to address, Michael?
That's pretty much it. Just where are you and where are you coming from?
Great.
And if the dog barking in the background gets annoying, let me know. Yoji.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Yoji Shimizu, he, him pronouns.
I've been involved with FIRST Robotics since 2005, initially as a parent and then as a mentor for Team 1816 The Green Machine. Also started volunteering about 2009 or 2010. I'm involved with the program because I continue to be inspired by the students that I get a chance to work with and interact with. The program provides them with some really exposure to really important skills that are going to be helpful to them, and that I wish actually many of the older students that I work with in my day job had. So that's why I'm still involved.
Thanks for joining us. Did anyone else come in late that wants to do a quick hello? Who are you and where are you coming from? Going once.
My name's Cameron Anoka. I'm on Team 3134 from Cass Lake.
Welcome. What do you do on that team, Cameron?
I build a lot, and I'm also on the Impact Award team.
Nice. That's very cool. All right. Anybody else? All right.
Yo. You
Oh,
there?
somebody.
I'm Greg. I'm Greg 5464, 10th year mentor for FRC and FTC teams. My wife told me to.
Welcome, Greg. All right, last call. All right, just an outline. So this is the first time I've hosted a roundtable discussion here. And kind of I just feel like one thing I should put out there is like in first approaching this, like I really had this idea of like, let's change the whole mentor student structure of the drive team, because I've been having some real issues with that. And as I actually got more and more realistic and started talking to people about it, I realized that there's a lot of people with pretty like set ideas of what that should be. And that's like not at all the argument I want to have. Because if we're here to really help the students have a positive experience, like there's an awful lot of common ground that I think we could find. And the more I thought about it, the more I was thinking about, okay, as I've watched students, and like I've watched students for 17 years now, come through this program, including my daughter, who was 3 when I started mentoring. Like there's some incredibly positive things that happen, and there's also some not so positive that happen. And what I would love to kind of come out of this evening with is some ideas of what can we actually do as a group of mentors, as a group of students, to improve the student experience on FIRST, so that when they're leaving, their time with us and heading off into the world, that we've really been that force of positive change that I think a lot of us have experienced. So my kind of like avenue into this is to start with what's working, and we don't have to hear from everybody, but I'd love to hear from a couple of people, like what are things that have really impacted you in a deep and positive way. And I'd also like to hear about what's not working. Like what are some impacts that have happened in your time with FIRST that have not been ideal? And then I'd love to dive a little bit into like the drive team. And like, I feel like that's one of the flashpoints in FIRST where things are really intense, stakes are really high, and we need to really be able to lean on gracious professionalism and cooperation. And I think sometimes those get dropped on the way to the field. I'd like to talk about how could we maybe kind of bolster up our experience around like being good with each other in those cases. Let's see. And so I kind of wanted to just, for myself, I was like looking at this, and was thinking that FIRST has done a lot of work defining what the program is and why the program is. I just wanted to like recap it, because I feel like that's the common ground we all share. It's really about helping young people prepare for the world of tomorrow. And it's a beautiful program. It's a beautiful vision where young people dream of becoming science and technology leaders. And it's interesting to me, like in reading over these, I always like something catches my eye. And I think part of right now I'm watching my own daughter get through her first year at DU in engineering, and realizing that like that's what she sees herself as. She sees herself as a leader who could help change the world in a positive way. And that came very much from her experience on FIRST. And the mission to provide life-changing robotics programs, which is a really bold mission and a really beautiful mission. And I realize that's what keeps me coming back each year, is this chance to actually help build skills, help build confidence, help build resilience, help build a better world. So at our school, whenever we do seminars or big conversations, we start by just talking about some norms. And so I thought I'd sort of put up my assumed norms for this conversation. And in a little bit, I'm going to work on that first norm of sharing the conversation and like making room for all of the other voices that are in the room. I'm going to have us do a couple like just silent like reflection moments so that people who don't process really fast have a chance to gather their thoughts and put their ideas out there. I think, does Meet have like a raise? It has like a raise hand option, right? So like as you have something to say, like I think it really helps keep the conversation. Thanks, Clay. Thanks, Liam. Awesome. Thanks, Tom. To use that is just a way of keeping the conversation moving from person to person. That way we don't have to jump in or interrupt each other. And when you're done talking, what's really nice is if you just call on the next person with their hand raised, that way it's not always coming back to me as facilitator, and it can just be a conversation among this whole round table. If you agree with someone, show snaps, and I think there's like a smiley face option. That way we don't have to repeat each other. It's one of my pet peeves in a meeting when, there we go, when people repeat the same thing over and over. As we get into some ideas, and I'm hoping to get into some ideas that actually get some emotions flowing. Awesome. Make sure to keep the conversation about the idea, not the person. We're all in this because we love it and value it deeply. And like, that's our common ground. Have this expectation that you're being heard, and that one of your big jobs is to listen to the voices that are speaking and to be willing to hold tension in life-giving ways. All right. So the first one I actually thought would be a nice opener for this evening is just, and I'll set a little 1-minute timer. And if you have something you're willing and like to share, go ahead and put your hand up during this minute. And then I'll just call on someone to start it off, and then you can call on each other. Is there a first life-changing memory that has happened for you, a positive one? Okay, 1 minute, go.
I'm seeing some hands up.
Okay. 30 more seconds. Okay. And if while people are talking, if you have something you'd like to contribute, definitely put your hand up there. Lexi, can I hand it off to you?
Yeah, mine's a little bit more of a moment of self-reflection that happened this year. But we had recently our travel meeting about going to Houston, and I got up and I did my thing and I talked about gracious professionalism, and it's gracious professional to utilize showers and deodorant before we take a 24-hour bus, and it was super funny and a fun moment for all of us. And I remember coming back to my seat, finishing the meeting, just felt normal to me. And when I was driving home that evening with my mom, she looked at me and she said, "This time, exactly 2 years ago, you expressed to me, like, I think I'm going to be team captain. And I don't understand how Michael, our previous team captain, like, just gets up there and talks and just does it off the cuff." Um, and it was just this moment of realizing how far I've come, and how much personal growth there's been for me. Um, Not only in that I have such a supportive team that has like pushed me to be better, um, but just knowing that I had mentors and students who are older than me who looked at me and they were like, "We know that you think you aren't ready, but that's okay. You're going to grow into this." Um, and so it was just this moment of being like, "Oh my goodness," you don't see it in the day to day, but over the whole course of being here, it's like I have grown so much, and that was really awesome moment. Oh, and I think Stacy was next.
Thank you for sharing that, Lexi. I like having seen that from a student perspective. I think our moment this year is the team won the first impact award at 10,000 Lakes, and well, we were so excited. And in the back of my business money mind, thinking, how are we going to make this happen? And the creativity of the students and their parents, we've in 1 week we got it all prepared, and the kids that would not necessarily talk to adults and things before, we're now going to the orthodontist and asking if the dental office would donate money for them, and the excitement and the joy that they have. It's they're not going to be the same kids because they accomplished this, and the enthusiasm they have is so genuine. That just really meant a lot to me. Oh, and I see John is next.
All right, this one's actually me. This isn't necessarily a first memory, but I was talking to someone at work and I mentioned that I was in robotics in high school, and they're like, "Oh, that's why you're really good at explaining technical concepts in non-technical ways, and why you're really good at working with people." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, it probably is." It was that moment where I realized how much I actually learned from robotics.
Thanks for sharing. Is there anyone else who wants to throw something out there? Then I'm going to transition to our next slide. So, what are some of the not so positive things that have happened? And I don't want to like do a long litany here, but if you can think of like what is like some like when I talk with my daughter, like there's a couple of moments that she can like that are vivid for her, like, oh, that was really a bummer day or really bummer moment when that happened and I wish it hadn't. And I feel like the advantage of like actually bringing some of these things up is it gives us a sort of a departure point, like, okay, where can we actually really affect improvement? And so are there any, I want to give you a minute just to think about it, that people are willing to share of that was a moment when this wasn't working well. All right, that's a minute. So there really aren't any that people want to share. We can like move on to the next step. But last call. Okay, Dominic.
I guess this one isn't particularly about first in general, but like thinking about, I'm going into my second year of captain's nominations on No Mythic, and like I was a Dean's List nominee this year, but I didn't win finalist award. And thinking about like sort of how those experiences, it's almost like bittersweet with like the idea of like, I put so much effort into the team and into the program. I mean, this is my, I think, 7th or 8th year doing first. And it's like having all of this sort of energy and passion for the program. And then, there's only so many people that can really get this recognition, get this award, and get this position of leadership, and sort of the self-reflection of like, I think I might be qualified and this other person is definitely qualified as well. And sort of, when, in the heat of the moment, emotions are high. And I think that's just the case for a lot of high schoolers. But the idea of like, how do we make a culture of, appreciating when other people are recognized for something, even if that costs you recognition. And I think that is an interesting sort of paradox of like, you want to be happy for someone while also not necessarily, while also, validating your own emotions of, hey, I, didn't do amazing. Like, I could have done something better, but then also thinking, it's a lot of luck of, who did the judges see and who had the better essay or whatever. And so, like, thinking, like, holding both the gratitude of other people on my team or other people in first are doing amazing work and they're getting recognized for this, but then also recognizing the, I didn't get recognized, and holding both the sadness and sort of the joy at the same time, which I think is something that could be improved on, both for me personally and I think maybe a little bit for like first in general.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate you sharing that. That's interesting. I was expecting more responses from this. So go for it, Rasmus.
Yeah. I was trying to think how to formulate this. Because one of the things that Nomothic has really strived for this year is really getting communication down between students, captains, and mentors. Because I remember, I think it was last year, I was one of the build captains with Michael's daughter. And one of the frustrations there was the sort of the students and captains wanted to bring the team one way, and mentors wanted to bring the team another way. And I remember that being sort of a roadblock where we were like, this is frustrating, but why? And so this year, we really sat down at the start of the year with the captains and build leads and the mentors. And we said, how do we do this better? And so we've really worked a lot on communication, but that's one of those things that has sort of stuck with me is like trying to get that communication down, making sure that everyone is going for that same vision, that same image. Yeah. Lexi.
Thanks, Rasmus. I was percolating when Dom was telling his story, and KnightKrawler submitted for the Impact Award this year, and that's something that I've really led during my course of leadership. And if you didn't know this, about the end of when you submit the Impact Award, you get feedback from the judges, and you can ask them a question, and they'll give you feedback. And just to make a long story short, at 10,000 Lakes, the feedback that we got from the judges was essentially, we asked them, like, what is another way we could connect and create a positive culture within STEM? And their response was, there's not enough first teams in Europe. And regardless of like if that's true, I think emotionally for myself and the students who worked on that project, it was very much a feeling of like, however irrational it is, like it's never going to be enough. Like no matter how much outreach we do, like it's not going to be enough. Which I don't think is actually true. But like that feeling of being like, oh, we work so hard, in the same way that Don was like, oh, all of our students who are nominated work so hard, and then wrestling with the other emotion of, frustration or disappointment, and not really knowing where to take that productively in the future. I think Liam, you're next.
Yeah. One of the things that I have noticed is I'm a student drive coach for 2491. And I, as like a tall, white, male presenting person, don't get a lot of people talking over me or people talking past me. But what I do see a lot of the time is people, especially not male identification getting talked over, getting talked past. And you'll be in a strategy meeting, and one of the things, side tangent, one of the things that I've been working on and working with Michael on is asking names, putting names to the faces, saying, "Hi, we're all people here, having fun." But then, like, they'll just jump into the strategy talking to only me or only our strategist, and it's like, hey, there's another person here who is totally like as invested, as intelligent as either of us. Talk to them too. And it's not all the time, it's not from most people, but when it is there, it is very blatantly there. Yeah, just my 2 cents. I think Clay's up next.
Thanks, Liam. And I think you actually addressed most of what I had in mind. I'm a first-year mentor, and so I'm new here. I'm new to a lot of these experiences, and new to the, I see FIRST Robotics as a high school sport, and I see the ways in which it's difficult for it to be like every other high school sport, in as much as like there aren't coaches out on the basketball court shooting free throws. But in FIRST Robotics, there are points in a team's development. I know I'm preaching to the choir here. There are points in a team's development where like there's a different level of mentor involvement that is appropriate to make sure the team is, moving forward and succeeding as a team. I'm not saying winning, I'm saying like growing and being enriched by the experience one way or another. And so I've been struggling with some of the things that I've heard, like I've heard what Liam just shared directly from Liam and from others on the team. And I'm the pit mentor for No Mythic this year. And our pit is a diverse group of kids, and it's frustrating to see some of the dynamics that I continue to see in my workplace and in the engineering world in general playing out when people are visiting our pit. And I think that our team has handled it really well. And I think that the students in our pit are incredibly knowledgeable and are great at talking to adults. And I still have to sometimes say to an adult who comes to speak to our team about our robot, I don't know what I'm talking about. Talk to them, or talk to her, or talk to this other person who's a student and knows more about this robot than I do. Just because I'm, tall white guy doesn't mean I am in charge here. And that's something that I just want to see continue to change. And yeah, and I'm here to learn. Mostly I'm here to hear about these things. So it looks like David's next.
Kind of to echo on, Clay and Liam, one of the most frustrating points was actually this year at 10,000 Lakes during inspection. The inspector was giving some advice on how they would improve what the students had done, but he was talking directly to me versus Jaredon, who was there leading the student aspect, and I was just kind of witnessing, and he was directly involved in all the build and engineering of it. It's like, it's a student-led thing. Why are you talking to the adult about the improvements you'd make? Was kind of a frustration to me.
Yeah. It's interesting. Like last year was actually a really eye-opening year for me, in that I had Clay's position last year being pit lead, and my daughter Ava was a student pit lead, and like I had a hard time at first believing her when she would talk about how people wouldn't pay attention to her or listen to her. And I had to start watching, and I would watch as and it was judges, it was other students, it was other adults that would come to our pit, and they would immediately turn to the first male presenting person and begin talking, even though Ava was the most knowledgeable person in the pit. And there's like, okay, there's a lot of work here that needs to be done, both like for the mentor community, for the how do we train our students to actually like be aware of that, and even a request that first to begin like helping the judges understand like who to talk to when they come to a pit. But I also had to watch, like, as soon as if Ava was in a conversation with the judge, if any of either me or a male presenting person entered the conversation, the conversation would totally shift to away from Ava. and wouldn't shift back unless like someone made the conversation go back, either by walking away or by like turning to Ava and saying something as clumsy as, "What do you think, Ava? Since you're the pit lead." And that was hard, like to see it happen over and over again. Then we went to Worlds, and like the same thing at Worlds, like happened over and over again. And so like really wanting to like help her not to have to do the work. Like how can we as a culture, like how can we shift our culture so that that's happening less and less? That's one of the questions I have been pondering a lot. Jesse.
Since we're kind of on the topic of gender and stuff like that, one of the teams I coach is an all girls team out of Cass Lake, and you know I do my best to make myself very scarce when judges come into the pit. I got some female alumni that do an excellent job talking to them, and I don't even want to be around because I know they're going to handle it, and they shouldn't want to talk to me anyway as a judge. But I do see it like when they do their strategy sessions pre-match. The girls are getting way better at being more assertive and having a good plan going into it. So that kind of forces people to listen to them. But I still feel that if you have 2 or 3 young ladies come up to a strategy session with 2 other teams, it's a lot of the guys talking, and it's they can get talked over, but they're getting better at doing that. But I just wish that wasn't the case sometimes.
Yeah.
So in response, yeah, in response to that last comment, I'm sorry, I lost who said it. Forgive me. I hear I appreciate that y'all have been coaching these young women to be assertive and to like carve out that space for themselves. And I think the step after that, or the step that perhaps I want to see more of, is like creating a space in which they aren't having to work that hard to carve out the space for themselves, or they're on an even footing as anyone else in one of those roles, right? Like I have a handful of non-male coworkers and former coworkers who are by necessity tough as nails, because that's the only way they could make it in the engineering world as a non-white dude. And how do we get there? How do we do that in this this youth environment? How do we foster that growth, or how do we foster that change? How do we continue that transition?
So I'm going to go to the next slide, and it's been a while since I saw my slide, so I'm hoping it's in the order I thought it was. And we're not leaving this topic behind, but I just wanted to like move. Since you asked, how do we do that? I feel like one of the things that when I first got into FRC that I fell in love with was the Woody Flowers talks, and like listening to Woody talk about what does it mean to be a gracious professional. And watching his videos, like the idea, okay, it's there. It's really explicit in the FRC ethos that you're like, this is expected, like from coaches, from students. The idea of treating each other with respect and kindness is like baked into the ethos, and yet it doesn't always show up. And the place that I think I've experienced it falling by the wayside most is actually in those driver team meetings. And I think it's the nature of the intensity of the moment and the briefness of the moment. And I actually wanted to put this out to the crew, like, what does your team do? Like, how do you help the kids become gracious professionals, especially in a moment like that, where time is short, pressure is high, stakes are high. And I'm going to like jump through like just the next 3 slides really quick to see where this is kind of going. And I want to start here with this idea of, how do you prepare your team for doing this? How do you prepare a group of young students for this? It's ethically complex. You want to win, but you don't want to win at all costs. You have ideas you want to assert, but you also have to figure out how to listen. And I also though like want to hear like what is working, what are people doing to help their drive teams be good people. And like in talking with Nicole, one of the things Nicole Screnshaw brought up is like we don't really have a clear like set of standards for what we expect of our drive teams. And I would love to actually work with some people to develop at least a prototype set of standards of what would we expect. And like simple as things as like starting the meeting with saying people's names. Like what sort of things can we do to help people be better people with each other? So I want to come back to here, like what do you do to help your team prepare for the competition so that they can be graciously professional, beyond taking showers? There's a lot that goes on, and I really appreciate the showers. So 1 minute timer starting now. All right. I'm hoping some people have some ideas that they're willing to put out there. Lexi, thanks for jumping in.
Yeah. First off, I'm hopefully going to throw it to Isaac from our team because he was on drive team last year and could be more specific on that. But on the whole team culture side, something that I've had some realizations about more recently is, and maybe this is something that I'm just going to work on, but we do a lot of conversations on like, we're GP, like we're going to be graciously professional, like this is really important. But I realized, whether this was just my own leading, it didn't really delve in super in depth into like why. Like, why are we being graciously professional? What does that accomplish in terms of being at the competition and the mission of FIRST, and what it means to be an FRC team? And so I think for especially a lot of our newer students, giving them that why behind gracious professionalism and like what it does, and it's the fact that it's not only is it about respect, but it's about valuing other people's efforts and making sure that we create an environment where students value the work that they've done regardless of the outcome and things like that, and really engaging them in that kind of behind the scenes thinking of like, yes, we do this thing, but here is why. And I think engaging them in the importance of it helps, when we say, okay, these are the steps to do that. But yeah, I'd love to throw it to Isaac if he's here and ready to talk about our drive team process, because I know that at least through our drive team process, there are some things with gracious professionalism.
Yeah, I can talk about that more. So part of what we do, even before we get out on the field and do strategy talks, when we are actually like applying for driver positions, be it our primary or secondary, or I believe even human player, we like, or our mentors who like ultimately make the decision, they test on what a student would do in a situation. Like say, for example, the primary driver test this year, the first part of it, before we even got to the skills, was like if a robot has like, this is their last opportunity to show like their say shooter, but they really need to be playing amp this round, like how do you respond in that situation? So it's really like even before you get to the field, practicing the being graciously professional and being knowing what is like, I guess, how to handle that situation with care and to be accepting and like not force that team into a box. The other thing we do is our coach is a mentor. So during those strategy talks, our coach is there and present And if anything, like if one of our students were to be on GP, then they would be like, they would have a talk with them or like try and steer the conversation away from that un-GP-ness.
I'm curious, Isaac, if you could think of an example of like when that happened and how that played out.
I think last year we were down on the field. It was maybe final. I think it was in playoffs, but not finals. And during like the last 30 seconds, our alliance partners and like our driver or our primary driver had like taken their hands off the controls and were like high-fiving, and that was not okay. But we still won that because of the margin that we had on the other team. So that was something that was addressed like after the competition, like in a not one-on-one, but in a like small group drive team discussion.
Very cool. John, do you want to jump in?
Well, I was going to bring up an example that we had at Worlds back in 2019. Our last match that year, we were with a team called 771 SWAT from Ontario, and we were with 4481, the Rembrandts from Netherlands. And I don't know how many of you remember 2019, but you could have one robot play defense. And both of those teams absolutely desperately wanted to play defense to show how they could play defense. And we were the only team that year we were the only team in that alliance that could move cargo. So that was one of it was a very ugly alliance discussion, because the Rembrandts were trying to bully their way into playing defense, and we actually wanted SWAT to play defense. And it was. And for those of you that don't remember, 4481 and eventually got picked to play defense and actually are world champions that year. But it was a very interesting discussion because, they were both very, the Rembrandts were really trying to steamroll both of us. And we had to stand up to them to say, hey, SWAT got here by playing defense. They're better at defense. And we want them to play defense because we need you to run hatch panels.
What we eventually ended with is we ended up with a compromise where SWAT would start on defense because Rembrandt said they could fill a rocket. So we basically told them they can fill a rocket and then we'll let them switch on defense. And then everyone agreed to that. But I mean, we had to come to that compromise after a lot of discussion. So.
Yeah.
Interesting. Right?
Yeah, just a quick note on Rembrandts. That's interesting. I've had really good experiences with them historically, but it's interesting. To the topic at hand, I would say that, I've been involved in a lot of strategy discussions and a lot of, alliance selection type discussions. And the one big takeaway I've had from all of that is there's never, ever, ever a situation where you need to steamroll another team in order to come to a good strategy. You can always facilitate it in a way that everyone's happy with what they're doing. At least I've found. And when you get into situations where, like 2019 was a challenging one where, only one team could actually, by the rules, play defense. If you have two teams wanting to do it, that's a really, of the conversations, that's among the most challenging situations. But in a game like this one in particular, where there's so many different ways to play, and you can tailor an alliance strategy to how teams want to play and optimize their experience in a match. I think having somebody who has been through a lot of those conversations can help to facilitate that in a way that can navigate the conflict and kind of prevent the conflict before it arises.
Ryan, do you guys do any training specifically for that. Like,
So-
I just, like a really small example is I know like I've been working with Liam of like whenever you start a strategy conversation, do a round of introductions. Because as soon as you're seeing each other as people, it's a lot easier to find that common ground. And I've noticed that for high school students, that sometimes is a really hard thing to do, to actually stop, look at each other, and say, "Oh, hi, you're Ryan. Hi, I'm Ryan. I'm Michael," and to build from there.
No,
Those
it
you
was
guys do things.
It was super interesting. I believe it was Northern Lights. We had a match with you guys with Liam, and Liam did that, and was like, "Hey, my name's Liam," and we went around. We all introduced each other, and I'm adopting that moving forward. I really like that. Break the ice, get everybody kind of on the same page. I thought it was fantastic. Regarding training for our team, I don't know that we've got a formal training to prep for conversations with other teams. What we more so do is just try to treat each other with respect throughout the season. I mean, that is the practice, is just how we talk to each other, how we communicate with each other. And then, providing feedback too, if we're doing so in a way that, creates issues internally to the team, it's, something that it's learning opportunities for the students more than anything. And we try to get into a competition mindset at home all the time. We try to live it, right? So that it's not, you're treating people one way at home and treating people one way at the event. So we don't have formal training. I like the idea of maybe a guideline or something. I love the philosophy of introducing everybody and breaking the ice that way, but to kind of summarize, no, we don't have a formal training, but we try to live it every day.
Maybe you want to jump in?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad to hear that the names went well. That was a huge highlight. Thank you. One of the biggest things that our drive team does is after every single match, we go back, we look at the match, we say, what could we do? What did we do well and what did we do better? And something that really shines about our drive team this year is that we come back and immediately, like, we all have things that, yeah, I should have done this better. I can do this better. How can we be better? And they immediately admit, hey, yeah, I didn't see this thing. I'm sorry. I'll do it. I'll fix it next time. And what I love about that is we don't just apply it to how we drive. We also apply it to how we interacted with other teams. There's a particular match where we went to climb and we didn't quite climb, and I let a swear word loose on the field, which is something I really, really try not to do. And so after that, we went back to the meeting. I was like, you know what? The biggest thing I have to work on after that match is not swearing when we don't climb. And a big part of that is, if you're intense in the moment, it could be it could be seen as angry or disrespectful or mad at other teams. And so holding on to that has been really important for me. And so we work to improve on ourselves, not just in terms of driving, but also in terms of how do we interact better. And I think if all of the drive teams were able to bring that, and I'm not saying most don't, there's a couple that I've seen that really have, but it's been a really important and big step this year for us. Yeah.
Jesse, you want to jump in?
Yeah. Just kind of to echo Liam there, we were on an alliance with Vern, team 5461, when we were out in Idaho last year. I don't know if anybody's ever competed with them, but great people. They picked us up they were an alliance captain. They picked up our girls team, and they ran the post-match stuff like really well. Like it was what did we do well? What can we work on for next match? Are we going to do it? We kind of went around the circle. We circled up, went around the circle, and everybody kind of gave their input. It was all directed by their adult drive coach, but very open to suggestion, very positive, even in the matches that we didn't win. So it was, I took some inspiration from that, even though I'm not a drive coach anymore, but very well run, and you could definitely tell that they've done that before, and where the kids felt very comfortable voicing themselves. So it was a really nice experience.
Jesse, something you said in there about like going in a circle. Was that like everyone then would take a chance to speak, or like how did that run?
Yeah, if they wanted to, yeah. We kind of just went around the group after each match, and like people saw or spoke about what they saw or what they could improve upon or what they saw that was good. So everybody got a chance to talk, and he made a point of making sure that everybody did if they wanted to. So it was pretty cool.
So I totally forgot to mention what I think is maybe the most important thing that we do as a team during events with our drive team. And that is after every match, we do what we call a drive team meeting. We, with our human player, driver, operator, drive coach, media, and then an external kind of third party perspective. We go to a secluded area of the regional or of the event, and we go one by one. So we start with our human player, gets everything off their chest. We go to our operator, gets everything off their chest, our driver, drive coach, media, and then our technician. So everybody just, it relieves the pressure from the match. So a lot of the time we'll leave and somebody will mess something up. The operator will, forget to climb, or the driver will, crash into something and break the intake. And what I've found is that period of time, and it's like a 5-10 minute thing, but that period of time is really like a pressure relief valve, where when we come out of that meeting, I feel like tensions are lower, spirits are higher, regardless of how well or how poorly a match would have gone. And when the spirits of the drive team are high, I think the interactions between other teams and our team are more positive, right? When pressure's up and people are stressed out, typically I feel like that's when negative interactions occur. Getting the negative interactions or eliminating the stress can help to head off that as well, in my opinion.
Eric, you want to jump in?
I have a question. It has to do with sort of ethical, and I'm not a drive team coach, but how do teams talk or strategize with other teams that are going to have a negative impact on your match? And that's sort of a complex thing that I wonder how you react, or how do teams work with that?
I kind of want to jump in on that one if that's okay. Because Liam, I'm thinking we had a match at 10K where it was really clear that one of the alliance partners was going to struggle. And what I told Liam is like, your job is to make this person like the most important piece of our strategy, like, because they have something to contribute. And like, if the robot can move, they have something to contribute. And so your job now is to figure out how to make them a valuable asset to our team. And they did a fantastic job of it. It was really cool watching them, and also watching, like, I watched in that meeting their drive, the two people who were representing their drive team go from kind of coming in very apologetically, looking like, oh crap, here we go again, to oh, you actually want us to do something, and oh, we're going to actually play an important role, and oh my gosh, do you think we can actually win this because of what we're going to do? And I feel like that's kind of to me, that's one of the skills I'd love to see us trained. Like, how do you go into a meeting and you have, like, your job is to pull out the best from everybody, and that's what leadership is about. I'm going to bump to Clay and then to Ryan.
Ryan, if you got a direct response to the last question, I'm going to ask another question, so go ahead and answer that if that's the case.
For sure. Yeah, no, I do. My absolute high point of the season was talking to a team at the Northern Lights Regional that had a Mecanum drivetrain, and essentially that was it. It was a Mecanum drivetrain, and the kids were working hard on it throughout the entire event, essentially. And we had a qualification match with them that, you know, we were going to get blown out by a lot, right? So we were going into it with, you know, very happy-go-lucky, you know, we're going to do our best here. And between the conversations that we had leading up to the match, and then the conversations with that team after the match, just the whole the vibe, the whole mentality that team brought, and that I feel like our team interacted with them, we came away with just such a positive experience. The lead mentor for that team approached me after our qualification match, and he said these kids, their whole experience was you know, right side up. Basically, it was turned around. And we've since followed up with that team, you know, after the event, and they've been inspired to build a kit bot, to do off-season meetings, to, you know, do X, Y, and Z to improve their team. And I think one interaction can be so powerful during an event, and just, you know, the way that teams interact with each other. I'm rambling a little bit, but it was my high point of the season, just because of the actual real impact that I felt that was made on that team.
I was thinking.
Yeah, go ahead, Michael.
Wait, can I jump one thing? Is
Yep, you bet.
Lexi, who was the drive person that you tagged earlier?
Isaac.
Isaac. Isaac, when you were talking about the drive, like the tests they have for drive coaches, and like I'm watching some of the Woody Flowers videos, his one on ethics is all about practice before you get there. Like, what are you going to do when you're going into strategy with a team that is, you know, a coffee table? Like, are you going to look at, like, how do you pull them into the, like, how can you help build them up? And how are you going to respond, you know, through the match, after the match? I feel like, Ryan, what you just gave an example of is like, here's how you can have a really positive impact that's maybe more important than the match you just played. But those are also, I think, things that if you don't talk about ahead of time are sometimes really hard to do in the moment. So, Clay, back to you. Or Isaac, did you want to add something?
Go for it, Isaac.
Oh, no, you're good.
Line of question. I'm going to pose another question, so we might as well like get through this line of questioning, because I'm going to ask another one. Just keep me in mind, Michael.
All right, I gotcha.
I have something to add. I think one thing that I always try to do, I'm the strategist, so I work with Liam and whatnot during those strategy discussions. And sort of going into those discussions with sort of a, okay, here's how we might want this match to play out, but being open to like other teams being like, hey, our shooter isn't working right now. Maybe, and we came into this discussion thinking, oh, they can do speaker or whatever, and sort of being on our toes, being like, okay, this thing isn't going to work. How can we adjust that? Or thinking about, you know, maybe one team, our data says that they can't really do AMP, but they really want to show off that they can do AMP. And so going into these discussions, thinking about, you know, how do we sort of have a winning strategy that we go in, or what we think is a winning strategy going into these discussions, and being able to adjust that as other teams or even our own team like have sort of new information. Or like one thing I always like to do for autos is like, okay, what's an auto you want to run? Here's an like what's an auto the other team wants to run. And then like I know at least for our team, we didn't particularly care which auto we ran, and so we would always sort of fill in the gaps. And so allowing other teams to sort of show off their strengths during quals matches, I think is a really important part of strategy. And, you know, depending on the match, you know, if you know that if the data says that you're going to win it by a large margin, then, you know, you go into it being like, you know, we're a super strong alliance, you know, we can probably pretty much do whatever we want, you know, show off different parts of our robots that we haven't necessarily shown off before. Or, you know, and so thinking about like, how can we facilitate discussions to highlight the strengths of robots that team wants to highlight? And since, Minnesota regionals, you only have like 9 qualification matches or whatever, thinking about like every qualification match counts in terms of teams will be watching. And so thinking about that, and that's something we always like to do.
See, any more comments, or should we go on to Clay's next question? All right.
All right. So the No Mythic folks have heard this sort of question from me a lot because I lean on it heavily. I'm new here, and there are some things that I wonder about, mostly because I just don't have enough context to wrap my head around them completely. But like, I think I mentioned this earlier. It's one of the only sports that I've seen where they're like a high school sports where I've seen like there are some roles that can be filled, like within the scope of the rules, can be filled by a student or a mentor. And I've heard anecdotal and some direct reports of like there being some really complex power dynamics at play, whether they're like deliberate or unintentional, in the context of drive coaches. When some drive coaches are students and some are adult mentors or alumni mentors, however that works out. So to teams that operate with a adult drive coach predominantly, like how whether if this is an answer you're giving for yourself or an answer that you're giving like on behalf of your team or your policies or your best practices, how do you manage and walk a very delicate line around like being engaged in a strategy discussion where there are perhaps maybe only slightly differing opinions on what the plan should be, knowing full well that you or that somebody in that strategy discussion has like sort of an unspoken substantial power dynamic advantage, being an adult or being taller, having a louder voice, however that works out. Like, what do you do to make sure that like the sport that is for students is still being played with the best interest of those students in mind and is empowering those young people to make those strategy and leadership decisions? I'm genuinely curious because I don't think that I think I would struggle in a role like that to be able to like advocate for my team and also like lift up the young people who are, who are the competitors here.
Scott, you want to jump in?
Sure. I am not a drive coach for our team. I've had a lot of discussions. I have the benefit of knowing that this was coming up because Michael and I have been talking about this for 2 weeks. And I've had a lot of discussions with our drive coach. So a couple of things, Clay. I think there's 2 different ways to think about the drive coach position. I tend to think about isn't it amazing that FIRST is so awesome that we give teams the option of putting a student into an adult role. I think coaching is an adult role, generally speaking. And I think it's awesome that teams have the options to put a student there if they want. You compare it to all other sports, the coach is an adult. So I tend to look at it that way as I think FIRST is amazing because we let students step into an adult role if the team feels like they have everything it takes to be a coach and it's the best thing for their team. I think that's awesome. But you say, to answer your question directly, how does an adult lift up other students? How does it do things that are both best for the team but facilitates everyone else? I think what you're describing is what it is to be a mentor. I think that's what our jobs are, is to be a mentor. That's kind of what we do all the time as a mentor. Now, some people aren't very good at it, and I recognize that. I think that some adults aren't very good at being a mentor. They may not be very good at being a drive coach, just like some students aren't very good at being a drive coach because they don't make space for other people or don't let other people, have room to voice their opinion. So I think our drive coach does a good job of that. I've heard lots of stories from Pete about how he manages, tries to sort of manage conversations, he will often say that he'll walk into a conversation that's sort of heated, and he sees his role of sort of calming that down, keeping everyone on an even keel, giving everyone an opportunity to voice their opinion. And I think that's something that comes with being an adult or being a mentor, right? That's your job, is to do that. And like I said, some people aren't good at that, but I think others, that's why they're a mentor, because they do a good job doing that.
Liam, then Sam.
One of the things that I am a student drive coach, which has been fantastic and a really great learning opportunity for me. It's been really fun. But one of the ways that I have felt really supported as a student drive coach has been to have mentors in the strategy conversation with me, and actually having Dominic in this conversation with me as well, and not being the only person responsible for it has been super helpful, because it means that off the field, I get all of the support that I need. When I come back from the field, it's everything that I need, the drive team needs. It's really nice. But then when we're on the field, it's kind of empowering and really cool to be a student, like only students on the field. It's like there's just 6 people from our team, no adults, who are fully in charge of getting the robot on the field, off the field, and performing on the field. It's a very vindicating and powerful and fun feeling. It's not for everyone. It's not for every team, but it's a really cool opportunity, and I have really enjoyed it. But that's just my personal experience. Sam?
Yeah, so I've been drive coaching the last couple of years as an adult, and there's been, really probably have a controversial answer to the question is we've just kind of having to avoid the situation where your students need to stand up to an adult who try to steamroll potentially your students, is by interjecting an adult in there on your team, it kind of nullifies that, if that makes sense. And it can be a really hard thing for a 17-year-old to speak up to a 35-year-old who's been doing it for a long time. And as a mentor, an adult drive coach, you try to, flip it around when you're talking, making sure you're not steamrolling other kids. But, I've heard so many stories of we didn't really want to do this, but we kind of got talked into it and we knew it was wrong, but we didn't want to speak up. And I guess in some ways we've kind of decided that this challenge is hard enough without having to overcome that, at least. But that might change in the future. We've also talked about having adult there during the strategy session, but not actually on the field. So a student drive coach, but at least an adult is mediating ahead of time, just to make sure that, things are going down the way we all want in a gracious, professional way. So, yeah. Another opinion, maybe controversial, but there it is. So, go ahead, Scott.
So I had a conversation with Nicole Shoshaw about this as part of the hub meeting that happened, the last quarterly hub meeting we had, because GP and the drive teams came up because it was a hot button on Chief Delphi at the time, or maybe it was on the Minnesota Slack for the Mentors channel. And I shared a story from my personal business. So for those of you who don't know, I own a gaming company. It's a mobile game. And in this game, there's messaging between players. And if you've been on the internet, the internet's full of bad people. And if you play games, you know that gamers are kind of the worst of the bad people in terms of how they interact with each other and how they converse and the terrible, terrible things that they say. My very first employee I hired her to do a lot of different things, but one of the things I hired her to do was to manage support. And it got to a point where she was spending 8 to 12 hours a week responding to support emails about so-and-so called me this bad name or this or that, and I want them banned, and I want them kicked out, and all of these things. And of course, we don't just take gamers' words for it. We actually go back and do the research and watch and look through the message chain and find out that things would escalate from sort of a friendly jab to the game to all the way up to I'm going to find you and kidnap your dog, or much, much worse. And so it got to the point where I was spending way, way, way too much money to deal with abuse. It was just bad. And so I spent a few months and I built an abuse system in the game so that if someone sent you a message, you could flag it as abusive. And you could, from the beginning, you could always block somebody so they could never message you. And people didn't use it. And so if you flag somebody for abuse, you can no longer ever talk. There's no messaging ever. Permanent ban. You flag somebody for abuse, they're reported, which is an automated system that locks them out of messaging for 48, 96 hours, whatever the case may be. But then you two can never message each other anymore. Now, people would start using that as an abuse mechanism to kick people out of messaging for 2 to 3 days. And so, of course, there needed to be an appeal system. And only when you would appeal it saying, hey, somebody flagged this as abuse. I was just saying hello, and they flagged me for abuse to kick me out of messaging. Only then would it come to my support person, Christy, and Christy would look at it. The reason why I'm telling you this story is that because I was spending 8 to 12 hours a day, she was spending 8 to 12 hours a day dealing with people who were doing bad things. We put in this abuse system. In 1 year after this abuse system in place, we had 1 email come to support on an appeal. And the reason why I'm saying this is that when there's a system in place, then people change their behavior. And so one of the suggestions I made to Nicole is you walk off the field, there's a QR code, everybody's got their phones in their pocket, or at least somebody in your drive team does. You scan the QR code for match 12 and you say, how was your drive team experience? And you very quickly evaluate your alliance partners. Did you feel pressured into something? Did you feel like you were able to communicate your ideas effectively? If people know that they're being measured and they know what they're going to be measured on, they will change their behavior. And I think we're having this discussion because we've all had bad experiences or we've all heard stories of people who have had bad experiences. But you know what? I'll bet you those people that were behaving poorly didn't realize it, didn't know it. No one told them. There was no opportunity for them to fix that or reflect and say, oh, yeah, that was bad. I really, really probably should have approached that a different way. And I think that if we would go back, I mean, I think everyone's on this call here because they care very deeply about this issue. But those who aren't on the call may not be thinking about it because it's just, drive team is something we do. And I would really like to think that maybe instead of having a meeting at the beginning of their saying, you guys need to be GP. And, GP for some teams is kind of nebulously defined. But if we didn't have evaluation system and everybody knew they were being evaluated, everybody got their feedback of how did I do? Our team scored a 2.8 out of 5 for being GP, and the average at this event was 3.6. Holy cow, we didn't do a very good job. And now it's an opportunity for you to get some high-level feedback, and it's an opportunity for you to reflect saying, wow, this is really a weakness for our team. This is something that we need to do better. It's an idea. It comes from personal experience, and I've seen just how much a system can change behavior in a positive way.
Yeah. I think the way that we've seen this work, so on KnightKrawler, when we have our alliance strategy discussions where we take all the data and look at things on Friday night, at least for the past couple of years, sometimes a mentor has been involved, but usually the past 2 years, there's been no mentor. It's all students. And what I've seen from that is you have upperclassmen who set a system of saying and being very intentional, yes, we're GP during competition. Yes, we're GP when others are around. And we are GP right now, even when we're all alone in a room talking about this data, right? And we have a very clear set of language that we will use around there is never a bad robot, right? There is never a robot who's not doing, it's just they aren't right for our strategy because all the robots have worth. And what I've been able to see is that when you have a system like that in place where the expectations are very clear, sometimes we'll have a freshman who comes into that meeting and does not say things. And when they're immediately corrected, it's oh, okay, clearly this behavior is not acceptable. And if I want to participate in this, I'm going to have to follow the rules. And I think the feedback element is really important.
Scott, actually, I love that idea of feedback. And Lexi, I also love that image of the upperclassmen giving the lowerclassmen the feedback. Like, these are the values we hold, and continuing to hold them. I think what's interesting is, like, when I think of this issue, like, I think the word coach is kind of unfortunate, because like in no other sport does the coach go out on the field with the team members. And so it's like my head always goes sideways when I hear, like, well, coach is, but you're on the field with them. How can that be a coach? That's a player position. And I also have been struggling lately with this idea of mentorship, that there's a really clear sequence in first of, like, when you're mentoring, you're going from you're watching me while I show you how to do it, to I'm watching you while you do it. This kind of like sequence. And it's interesting that in this like conversation of drive coaching, teams have their approach. And I think the door's being knocked on. My youngest child has arrived home. But this seems to be like treated differently than most other mentoring positions. And I've kind of come to terms that I don't think anyone's going to convince anyone that they're right or wrong on this. Like, I think people who believe a mentor should be there, like, have really valid reasons for believing it. And for people who believe a student should be there, have really valid reasons for believing it. I love the finding that middle ground of, like, if we began giving feedback to whether it was a student or an adult on every match, like, that could actually significantly change how people behave and what kind of, like, what happens next. I would also love to see like some more clear standards of what does GP mean, like, because it gets really nebulous. But it was like, hey, GP means things like getting to know each other's names, listening, and not just speaking. Echoing back. If Lexi says X, then I'm going to say, okay, Lexi, what I heard you say is, to try and just check for clarification. Like, are we on the same page or not? And I think, like, to me, that's a really rich place for figuring out how to improve the experience, not just like walk away feeling right or wrong. And I'm actually curious, Scott, if that conversation with Nicole went anywhere. Like, because that seems like a really interesting opening.
Well, I think it didn't. It hasn't gone anywhere yet. But again, I only talk to Nicole on a very irregular basis. I think that if, for example, there's a captain's Discord that I know that Lexi's been a part of. I feel like if we had a group of teams who said, we would like to do this, can we have permission to implement it? I feel like that would get some legs. And maybe it wouldn't be allowed, maybe it would. I don't know. But I feel like if this was coming from the teams, it might be easier than if it's coming from first. So, that was my piece of advice. That was my feedback. There's also kind of a technical implementation issue of how do you avoid abuse, right? How do you avoid somebody sort of sabotaging or sandbagging somebody else's feedback, and then you're like, well, you have to put in your email address. Well, now suddenly you don't give honest advice because your name's attached to it. So, building an abuse system is fraught with issues, right? It can solve some issues, but it can create other issues. And so, again, speaking from experience, it's a really, really tricky thing to do, and to do it right and to do it well, I think is going to take a lot of thought. And maybe the answer is just the identification of, we're thinking about doing this, and you start surveying all the teams of, do you think this is a good idea or not? Just the fact that you're talking about a system might have huge implications in how people behave on the drive team, because they're afraid, oh, we don't want to get in trouble because we do this thing that, turns out not so great. Teams don't like it. And then suddenly that changes the behavior, and we get what we want just because we started discussing kind of a reporting or feedback system. So no, it didn't go anywhere, not yet. I don't think that there's huge roadblocks to it, but I will share that it's not simple. And You know, the more you start digging into how would you build something like this, the more you start realizing, oh wow, there's a lot of ways this could go wrong too. So you have to be very careful about how you do it.
I'm also observing the time. It's 8:31, which I think puts us a minute past our end time. Is that correct, Scott?
It is, but you know, we've gone 10 minutes over. If you want to, you know, wrap this up in the next 5 to 15 minutes, that's okay with me. We don't necessarily have to push us all out the door exactly at 8:30.
Awesome. I love that. You know, I would love to hear actually, like, going back to Isaac's example of a question that you would face, you know, on a drive team. Like, what are the two examples of what does gracious professional look like? What does gracious professionalism look like in action? Specifically on the drive team. Because I also think, like, one of the things, Scott, is if you don't define what you're expecting, it's hard to expect people to do it. And John, do you want to dive in?
Okay. This one's me I was on drive team when I was on the team. And this is an anecdotal story that I think is kind of interesting. Basically, we were with a team. Our match strategy we all agreed where they were going to play defense, but they were nervous about playing defense. And I, as our team's drive coach, am like, we can switch drive coaches for the match. So your drive coach just has to give my drive team like their time, like what time it is on the field, and I can coach your drive team through defense. And we did end up switching like drive coaches for the match. So I got to coach a team that I'd never worked with before, basically how to play defense on the field. And it worked well. Did we win? We won the match, right? Okay. We don't remember if we won the match, but they played well, good defense. But yeah.
Let's dive in.
Yeah, so I want to jump in here. I want to start this off by saying I'm not on the drive coach. The only experience I have on the field is being technician a few times. But I know one of the things that this sort of debate about students versus mentors, or both, makes me think of is something that Nomadic had at the start of the year was a conversation between the sort of build leads and the mentors about where does everyone fit. And one of the conclusions we had coming out of that meeting was that for each project, like we had a few build leads that'll lead some systems. And we had that there'll be one student lead and one mentor lead, and they'll work together. And sort of what I'm hearing from that, I forget who mentioned it, but like having a mentor in the drive, like in those drive team meetings, no matter if you have a student or a mentor drive coach, seems really helpful. And I don't know, when I think of the sort of debate about like, do you have a student or a mentor? The thing that I think of is like, why not both? And I know that can't be there on the field, but I could see there being definitely some great help and like feedback there, and having that support system. And if people have thoughts about that, I'd love to hear because I'm not on drive team. This is just my little build brain doing little build things.
Best build brain ever. Jim, you want to jump in?
I think one thing that we encourage, both in the shop and especially out when the kids are interacting or the students are interacting with other teams, is that we see people. We don't see boys, we don't see girls, we don't see white, we don't see black, we don't see brown. We see people. We teach that or encourage that because first of all, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. We should be listening more than we're talking, and that's what the kids. That's what we try to teach them, because what you can hear from the other students, you may have not from a team that you may have said you think it might be a liability, you may hear something from them that they can really contribute something huge that you didn't have any clue that they might have. And so we encourage them to listen more. This year, and our team happens to have student drive coaches. This year we happen to have an Eagle Scout as a drive coach. So he's got some leadership, a little bit of leadership training and some experience with it. So that helps. But what the younger members of the team, not just the drive team, but the team in general, are learning from those older students is it gets passed down from year to year to year. So I would encourage, mentors to teach their kids to look at people. Don't classify them in one category or another. Look at them as people and treat them as people. If it feels right in your gut, it probably is. If it doesn't, it probably isn't. I want to thank everybody for showing up tonight. It's really nice to just see people's faces and hear people's thoughts about FIRST. I want to wish a special good luck to the teams going on to Houston, and remind you all to take showers. And it has been a good season so far. All right, any closing comments before you head off for the night? Right. Thanks again to KnightKrawler. Super appreciate you putting together these roundtables. It's a great way to just get some conversation out there. Thank you for everyone who contributed tonight. I loved hearing the different voices and the different stories. So,
I agree. Right. Thank you very much. And I want to echo a piece that I shared with your students at 10K. To all the No Mythic students on the call, we love having you on the call every week. You guys are the most consistent student team that shows up to give your advice, and you do also often and always give great feedback, offer great ideas. We really, really love that the No Mythic students are on the call. So for all of the mentors on the call, get your students on the call. Be like No Mythic.
All right.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody. I do not think we have a topic for next week. I haven't checked the sign-up sheet, but please, if you have ideas of what you want to chat about, bring them and let's chat about them next week. I'm sure the teams that are going to champs will be exhausted and we may be missing some normal faces, but it's a great opportunity for you to say, hey, let's chat about this or chat about that. So if you have thoughts and want to have something to talk about, please sign up and host a conversation. It's really easy, right, Michael?
It's really, well, I'm not sure I would say easy, but it's really fun.
Okay,
is there somewhere to put requests for ideas?
I
really wish someone would host a topic.
You can send your requests to me. When you sign up for the mailing list, there's a what do you want to hear about? And I do pull that list every so often, and that goes into the mailing of here's what has been requested. It's probably been since January since I pulled that list from new signups. But every email that goes out has a list of these are topics that have been suggested. And then once we do that topic, I move it to the bottom of these are the things we've talked about list. But yeah, I probably should go back and pull that out. And if you have something that you'd like added to that list, just send me an email, info@team2052, or you can respond back to the mailer that you get. Both of those come right back to me.
This is awesome.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. Good luck to those going to champs.
Great. Good night, everybody.